All right, it is Monday, November 20th. We are going to analyze some deals today. Let's keep our daily habits up, all right? So, what are we going to be working on today? We are going to be looking at this deal in Hazelwood, Missouri. Looked at one property here before. And this is an area just outside of St. Louis. Let's see if I can zoom out for you. Downtown St. Louis is right around here. And when we kind of zoom out over here, Hazelwood is right on the border of Florissant and Hazelwood near the airport. So that's why we're analyzing this deal today. This property is a townhouse, but it was a 4-bedroom under 100 grand. So that's probably what caught my eye first. And from this point onwards, let's try and get a quick gauge of how the property looks. So, townhouse attached. This part looks okay from flooring. This kitchen probably needs a little bit of help here. All right, so we're gonna keep on going, and looks like just some paint. This bathroom looks okay for the most part. I probably don't need to renovate this property. This got some carpet. I'll replace all the carpet because this looks pretty gross here. This bathroom probably needs a little renovation here. Looks a little old and tired. All right, so I'm gonna assume that I probably need about half the floor to be replaced on this property. So going through this property, it looks like it's just a bunch of townhomes in this area. I'm just trying to see if there's any like boarded up homes in this area that looks a little bit more sketchy, but it kind of just looks like a cluster of townhomes here. Just like a normal complex here, a little cul-de-sac. All right, nothing that's jumping out to me as like it's a really, really bad neighborhood. Next thing we want to do is go to tophap.com. I always go to tophap.com and try to look at the crime score and the crime index. Once you plug in the address up top up here, you can kind of come down here and click to the neighborhood section right here. Once you click to neighborhood, you're going to be able to find out what the crime index score looks like. I live in an area that's about 90, so 115 is just slightly above national average, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's like in a war zone. I've seen in some properties in like the 160s, which is a lot higher. So for me, this area looks solid for the most part. Nothing that's terribly scary until I get someone out there to actually look at the property. So next thing we want to do is we want to get the fair market rent. So how we would do it is we got to Google HUD FMR, HUD space FMR. And we're trying to grab the fair market rents, which is typically the ceiling rent that the federal government will pay for on a property by zip code and by bedroom count. We've been doing this every single day. So if you're watching this for the second or third time, please bear with us. But I want to make sure I start fresh and stay consistent with the process. So even someone new that's watching for the first time can follow along. Now, what zip code is this in? This was in, not this property, 63042. 63042. You can see here that a 3-bedroom rent is $1,480 and a 4-bedroom rent here is $1,710. So I'm going to write this in. 3-bedroom rent, 63042. And that's just part of my habits every day. 63042. I try and note down all these numbers so that if I ever come across a deal, I can kind of share this with my partners right away so that they can kind of see what my research has already shown up because they're already aware of my process. So this way they just kind of see all the numbers consolidated in one area. So we got the fair market rents for HUD. The next thing we want to do is we want to grab the market rents, which is going to be right here. And we're going to go to affordablehousing.com. You go to the market rent estimator. Once you go to the market rent estimator, you're able to plug in the address, and then you can plug in the bedroom count, which in this case is a 4-bedroom. And this is 1322. So I want to write this stuff down. So this is already a 4-bedroom. So this is NA. I don't need a 3-bedroom property. Typically, if it's a 3-bedroom, I always get a 4-bedroom rent because just in case there's a creative way for me to add extra bedroom, I can kind of see what the upside looks like. 1322, 1321, 1321. and in 1976. So this 1322 number is that the average rent for 25 units within a 1.82 mile radius, that's the average rent for this property. Now, when you combine or compare the 1322 to the 1710 that we saw earlier, which is the FMR for 4 bedroom, I am going to underwrite at 1322. Why? Because there's a test called the rent reasonableness test. And usually the housing authority will say, hey, just because the fair market rent, the FMR, is 1710 does not mean you can charge over what the market determines is a fair rent for the market. You cannot charge extra rent simply because you are renting out to a voucher holder. So you have to be really, really careful at assuming that you can get the full rent at 1710 when the market rent is only at 1322. So I might do two scenarios where I'll underwrite first at 1322 for rent, and then I'll also underwrite at 90% of the 1710, which is going to be equals to 1539. So those are the two scenarios that I'm going to underwrite with. Next up is I'm going to look at what my property taxes and rent are. And don't forget, there's a HOA here. So 287 HOA, let's kind of plug that in. So it's HOA plus sewer. So that the HOA was 287. And in St. Louis, they require you to pay $65 for the sewer. So 287 plus $65 is $352. Our monthly income rent, the first one I'm starting out with is $1322 because that's the market rent. So I believe that's my worst case scenario. So I want to see what my numbers look like at this current price range. Now, next thing up is I need to get the purchase price. The purchase price of this property is $98,700. So I'll plug that right in here, $98,700. And then I'm going to go to my rehab calculator, start putting in numbers. So when I looked at this property, I'm assuming that the roof is in solid shape, but I'm gonna leave aside $1,500 for something that I cannot see or cannot tell from the photos in terms of roof repairs. I usually had to spend at least like $3,000 at some of our properties for the roof. So it's just me being a little conservative and putting aside some money for things that I cannot see in the photos, but will likely come up in an inspection or something. So it's almost like a little contingency here. As I go down here, I am going to assume that I need to repaint the entire place. So I'm going to put 1428, which is a square footage for the home at $3 a square foot. Now, then I want to assume I need to replace half the flooring in the home because if you remember correctly from the photos, we saw that there were a bunch of homes. There were some wood flooring already in the property, but there was a lot of carpet in all the bedrooms. So I'm going to assume I need to replace the flooring in half. So I'm going to do equals 1428 divided by 2. Now, again, this does not need to be exact, right? I'm simply trying to figure out if this property is worth my time to send a contractor out there to get me a better bid. Because if it's so far out from being a deal, then for me, it's not worth me wasting the goodwill that I have with my contractors to go out there and just do a bid. Because the more you waste your time, the less likely that good contractors, especially if they're good, they're likely busy, that they're willing to help you out here. So let's look at the kitchen here. How did the kitchen look? Kitchen looks fine. I could probably repaint the cabinets really to make it look a little bit more modern. So I want to put in repaint the cabinets. Do I need a new range? No, I don't need a new range. Do I need a new hood? Is there a fridge? I probably need to put in a refrigerator in here. So put in a refrigerator in here. Bathroom. I'm going to assume that I need to renovate the entire bathroom for one of them because it looks pretty old. Let's see if I can find that one. This bathroom looks fine. Let's see if I can find an older bathroom in here. This bathroom actually looks solid, actually. It doesn't look too bad. This bathroom looks a little older. So maybe I just replace one of the bathrooms here. It actually looks fine. So bathroom, I do not need to do it, but I'll put in a new vanity, a new countertop, a new vanity mirror, a new sink, and a new toilet for one of them, because one of them seemed pretty old. All right. As I go down this list, I'm going to assume that I need to replace the water heater because no one's living there right now. I don't know what issues are there. I would like to stay ahead of my renovations. And I got some money allocated on the side for some termite issues in case there are some termite issues. So from that point onwards, this gives me to a $25,000 rehab, which I feel like that's not that bad. At $25,000. Cool. So let's look at my returns now for this deal. I'm going to assume that I'm putting a 25% down payment. So that equals to B4, which is your asking price, times 25%. So I'm giving a $25,000 down payment roughly. I have 2.5% for closing costs, which is about $2,500, and then a reserve for renovations, which is what we had up there when we calculate beforehand. Right now, I'm going to estimate that I'm going to pay the rest of this balance at 8.5% interest rate, assuming a conventional purchase. And right now, assuming a conventional purchase at 8.5%, this is going to be a negative cash flow. So I'm just going to break even roughly, is essentially what it's saying, at negative $17 a month. And this is a negative 0.4% cash on cash return. This was assuming a purchase price of $98,700. And this is not seller finance deal, but I'm going to just write down payment and then the interest right here, just so I can remember it. Now, what if I'm able to get what I'm calling is my best case scenario, which is 90% of the fair market rent, because I would have renovated the home. So if I get 1539, which is 1710 times 0.9, which is the fair market rent we got earlier, I can get 1539 for rent. If that is scenario, oh, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. Let me make sure I get the property taxes up here. 1 second. Not perfect. $82 for property taxes. Let's update that. And the insurance number here is $72. 72. So I'm going to do equals 72 times 1.2, because typically the insurance estimate right here is for a primary residence home at $72. I'm going to multiply by 20% by 1.2, because typically a insurance premium for a rental property is a little bit higher. I use Steadily Insurance right now. We just saved about $1,200, so you guys can get a free quote from the referral link I have in the YouTube description there. Make sure when you guys are getting your insurance premium quoted, you guys are comparing apples to apples in terms of the liability limits and property damage limits and liability, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not an insurance professional, but make sure you guys are comparing apples to apples. All right. So now that I have updated these numbers, let's go back to my first scenario, because I don't want to mislead you guys. 1322. This is now a negative $45 cash flow, because our property taxes and insurance went up, and this is a negative 1% cash and cash return. So I don't like those numbers. Let's go to 1539. 1539. At 1539, this is now a 126 positive cash flow, and my cash and cash return now is 2.9% cash and cash return. For me, this is still not a deal because it's only 2.9%. My investors typically and I have a minimum investment of about 15 to 17% return. So this does not work. So we are in sub 2, and we always look at things like creative finance. So what I want to do now is look up this home and see whether or not there is an existing loan in place that we take over subject to, or if it's on free and clear, can the seller or finance it to us, and what terms would we accept that would make it a deal for us specifically. So I'm going to go to PropStream. I'm going to plug in this address, and when you go onto PropStream and you plug in the address, you can, let's see, 8711. Yep. You can click on this detailed screen. When you click on the detailed screen, you will see the section. It's called the mortgage and transaction history number. If there is an existing loan in place that you can take over subject to, it will be listed out here with the balance, interest rate, etc. This one does not, because it's owned free and clear. So for me, it looks like it's corporate owned, but if it was like an individual owner, maybe it's easier to negotiate. But I would like to figure out at what point can I make this a deal, assuming it's my worst case scenario at 1322. Okay. So if I turn this back to 1322, okay, how do I make this deal? How do I increase my cash and cash return to get it to 17%? Well, what if I lowered this to a 10% down payment, and I lowered my interest rate to 2.5%? It's lowered to 0%. So if I got this to 10% down payment, let's write these details down, and 0% interest rate to finance it to me on principal only payments, this would get me to $277 cash flow a month at 8.8% cash and cash return. And this was assuming a $98,700 purchase price. So the seller is still getting the terms that they want. I mean, the price that they want, but I'm getting the terms that work for me. The next thing I want to do is, well, what if my rent was the best case scenario at 1539? At 1539, this is now a $448 return. So this is much, much more like it. 448, 14.1, 1539. Now this gets a little bit closer to what I am looking for, and this might be a deal for me because it's all principal only payment, right? 10% down. But what if I turn this into a 5% down? Now all of a sudden this is a 15.75% return. So I might present this to the seller and say, well, I give you 5% down, and this is pretty much exactly what I'm looking for, 15.8%. That certainly meets my criteria from that perspective. But again, this is the best case scenario. And I might look at this number and say, well, because I'm financing more, I'm only making $434 and I want to make at least $500 a month. It's completely up to you on what your personal criteria is, and you have to decide what makes sense for you. Now, if I go back to 1322, quote unquote, my worst case scenario, this might seem like a great deal for me because if I'm only getting 1332 a month, I'm now cash flowing $263 a month. My cash and cash return is now 9.5% return. My purchase price is still $98,700. And now my down payment is still 5% and 0% seller finance for an interest rate. This to me is my quote unquote worst case scenario. So I might feel pretty good about this deal. Whereas, like, hey, if the sellers want to settle for 5% down, principal only payments, my worst case scenario, quote unquote, is $1,322 in rent a month. And that gets me a 9.5% cash and cash return. That will give me the confidence to pull the trigger on this deal, right? Because if you evaluate why you think this is the worst case scenario, well, then maybe you are more comfortable with how the deal looks. Even though your goal is to submit a application for 1539 rent a month, and you might justify it with, hey, I've renovated the home, look at all these new bathrooms, look at all these new floors that we did to make it a nicer home, blah, 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 blah. But you can also call the local housing authority and say, hey, what do you guys take into consideration for your homes? Because this is a 2.5 bath home, right? Maybe they prioritize a 2.5 bath home over a 1 bath home for a 4-bed, 1 bath versus a 4-bed, 2.5 bath. So these are all the things that are very specific to your local county and area. But I wanted to accomplish today was, one, show you guys why it was not a deal on conventional financing using 25% down to 8.5% interest rate. But if the seller was open to terms and create a finance deal, what might make that a deal? For me, a 10% down still is not a deal. But once you get into a 5% down deal, well, now all of a sudden you're using very little money in your own pocket. And if for some reason your rehab is actually lower than what you're expecting, than the 25 grand we have right there, then it might be even more attractive of a deal. So lots of different things and levers for you to kind of pull on to see what terms you are able to accept, because you might look at, hey, right now at 1539, I'm getting 15.8%. But what if I have a contractor went out there and actually gave me a bid? So if I know the seller is willing and open to terms, and I send a contractor out there and I say, hey, the bid comes back to, well, let's just do this. Let's do this, right? Let's turn this into half of it. Let's divide this by 2. If my rehab came in at only 13 grand, let's put in a little number here. This is rehab budget now. And now my rehab budget is 12,867. What am I willing to pay for rent at 1322? I mean, let's do 1539. 1539. Once you get to 1539, look at the cash and cash return. Now all of a sudden it's at 25%. So now I might be willing to say, I might be willing to give the seller 15% down, because that's still getting me an 18% cash and cash return. 1322, I'm cash flowing $462 a month. And now this is a 18.4% cash and cash return. Even though the purchase price is still the same, right, guys? Still the same at $98,700. But what happened? In this scenario, I can now get 15% down with 0% interest rate, all because I overestimated my renovations. And this allows me to justify to myself, hey, maybe it is worth, 1, calling the realtor to see if the seller's open to terms, and 2, if the seller's open to terms, now I'm willing to use some of that goodwill and send a contractor out there to this property and evaluate whether or not my renovations estimate was correct. So that was it, guys. Hopefully we went through some scenarios today. We talked about quickly how to come up with a different scenario and figure out whether or not something is a deal in this scenario. I have nothing to sell you guys. I hope this was helpful. I've been underwriting a deal every single day for 50 days in a row. This is the 51st day. I hope you guys can take what I'm doing right now and simply copy what I'm doing. Look at the same property using the same spreadsheet. You can DM me on Instagram at investwithkenthe if you want to copy to the spreadsheet. I've been fortunate to have been given the spreadsheet from other folks on a rehab calculator and a creative finance deal, and I've just been able to modify it based off of what I need for my deals. And I'm so grateful. But in order for us to solve the affordable housing problem, I have to get more people involved. In order to get more people involved, we have to help remove some of the fear from the process. And the only way for us to remove fear from that process is by simply underwriting a deal every single day. Hey, Diedrich W., good to hear from you, man. I'm so glad that was helpful, and I'm so glad you're able to learn from this. So copy what I'm doing, put it on your YouTube channel, and over 100 days, you guys will have your own YouTube channel with your own 100 deals that you've underwritten. So when you go and raise capital for a deal, again, I'm not soliciting any investments on this deal, on this property, or on this channel. I'm simply showing you guys what I'm doing every single day. This is the non-glorious part about real estate. People like to flash about the deals and how much money they make. They don't talk about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals that they looked at that were not deals. So this is what I'm doing today, but hopefully it gives you guys confidence so that when you guys get a deal and you are raising capital from another investor and they ask you, why do you think this is a deal? Well, look at my YouTube channel. Look at the past track record of my analysis of the past 100 deals I've looked at, and they were all not deals. This is how I know it's a deal, because I've looked at 100 deals that were not deals. And I think this will help you guys break through the paradigm of thinking that, one, I cannot afford it, I can't find capital for it, real estate's a rich person's game. I think if you stay consistent and you show people that you really do know what you're talking about. I do not claim to be an expert, but I do claim that I am consistent and I underwrite deals every single day because I have the track record to prove it on my YouTube channel. And I hope you guys can do the same thing for all these deals. And I hope you guys make a lot of money. And thank you for paying attention today. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for you guys caring about affordable housing, because without people like you guys, my family would have never had the home I grew up in. I would not become the person that I am today. So I'm so grateful to be in a community of affordable housing and real estate investing investors. And if you guys want to join our free Facebook group, just DM me on Instagram at investwithkenthe, and I can always send you guys to our free Facebook group. I go live in there every single day, and I've been posting all my resources and everything and all the research that I've been doing. So feel free to join our Facebook group. It's called Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. I post all my resources, all my contractors there, and I encourage you to do so at the same time, especially for folks that are already investing in affordable housing. Just imagine how scared you were in the beginning when you were getting started. You didn't know whether or not a contractor was going to steal from you. And I'm not saying the contractors I'm putting out there right now won't steal from you, but I can tell you that they have not stolen from me yet, because I have used them personally for my own renovations, for my own pool servicing. So it's a risk, but at least we've done some of the legwork. And I would argue that even some of the most seasoned investors out there right now, they all have the same problem, which is finding good people to be part of their team, responsible people who shows up when they say they're going to show up and do what they say they were going to do. And I think if you're able to find people with just those basic fundamentals, you're already 80% of the way there. So I'm so glad I was able to help today. Have a happy Monday, guys. I'll be doing this again tomorrow, and I'll still be doing this every day for the next 50 days. Does not matter for Thanksgiving, because I committed to it, and I hope you guys are able to see that going forward. So thank you guys for your time today. Have an amazing day, and we are out.